Today, we would like to switch our theme of the afternoon session to be Transforming Asia-Pacific, Innovative Solutions, Circular Economy, and Low Carbon Lifestyles. Speaking of sustainability, I would like to take this opportunity to let everyone know that we are not only talking about sustainable consumption and production. We are making it happen right here at the event by implementing sustainable meeting practices. You will see a sustainable and low waste menu upstairs where we have banned carbon-intensive red meat and feature plenty of local organic and sustainably produced menu items. For our decoration, we have reusable whiteboard and blackboards, and we have engaged local sketching artists to create our messaging around the venue and the buffet area. The decoration on our stage is also a reusable, and there are all plotted plants. This meeting is paperless, so our communications with you are digital mainly. And last but of course not the least, this is a carbon neutral event where the carbon footprint is minimized, measured, and offset. Ladies and gentlemen, to kickstart this part of the event, may I take this opportunity to invite Ms. Dechen, Tsering, Regional Director, UN Environment Asia and the Pacific Office, to the welcome remarks on the framing Asia's key questions about low carbon consumption. A round of applause to welcome her on the stage, please.
Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to His Excellency Pirkka Tapiola, Ambassador of the EU delegation to Thailand, to my honorable colleagues from different governments around the region, to partners, business leaders, entrepreneurs, young people, and colleagues in the UN community. I would like to first of all welcome you to sort of the session on transforming Asia-Pacific. We're looking at innovative solutions, circular economy, low carbon lifestyles. And I've been asked to thank the European Union that funds the Switch Asia program on sustainable consumption production. And with their generous support, we've been able to organize this event. We also have our co-hosts from CASEAN, Kun Shan, and Tongjai Thanachanan, Committee and Secretary, Foundation for the Institute of Social Enterprise Development. And yesterday they hosted a very meaningful and inspiring day on the ASEAN Sustainable Development Forum. They will work with us for the next day and a half. So the topic of this event, Transforming Asia-Pacific, we're looking at innovative solutions, and we're looking at it to contribute to important frameworks. So we're looking at transforming the world. We have the 2030 agenda, and the whole idea is how can we sort of trigger transformative change that will give our planet and future generations hope for a better world. And really, how do we set about a universal plan of action? The 2030 agenda, it's a plan for people, planet, and prosperity. So innovative solutions really is the next focus. And within UN Environment Assembly, we convened the UN Environment Assembly in March 2019, and governments will come together to look at innovative solutions. We want this region, our region, to be ready to have positions. And innovative solutions, we're really looking at business unusual approaches to address environmental challenges, reduce poverty, and contribute to sustainable consumption and production. And we are of the view that it's an amazing opportunity to channel the Switch Asia program towards this important opportunity for sustainable consumption production. So with the support of this regional policy advocacy Switch Asia component, we are advocating for consumption, more sustainable consumption, looking at circular economy models, but also looking at inclusive economic development. So the questions that we want to put forward to you in terms of innovative solutions, the first issue is innovative policy solutions. There have been policy briefs and videos which outline a menu of policy options, and we look at how do we mainstream sustainable consumption production into 5-year economic plans, how do we deploy financial instruments, subsidies, taxes, how do we use regulations, bans, standards, and how do we use policies like eco-label, sustainable certification, and lastly, the sustainable public procurement. How do we ready the market by stimulating demand for sustainable products and services? The other question is, what kind of innovative financial mechanisms are there? And we're really looking at how do we use finance, how do we use crowdfunding, venture capital, green finance. There's a lot of really important work that's being done by the Financial Stability Board and the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And really it's asking companies to report to the investors, to lenders, insurers, where they put their money. And for the first time with the Paris Agreement, where we talked about financial flows being consistent with a low carbon and climate resilient development pathway, we can actually direct where we put our money. Innovative business models, and here again we're looking at what models should be encouraged. Are there better ways of doing business? And we're looking at disruption, we're looking at the share economy models. How do we reduce the amount of capital needed? What are the circular economy models? How do we convert wealth to waste? How does digitization replace physical products with digital services? So we look at the whole technology innovation wave, and we look at how do we embed sustainability into this wave. We're looking at, you've seen, in the video earlier, artificial intelligence, blockchain, Internet of Things. How do we unlock opportunities for sustainable consumption and production? How do we take countries that are a certain level of development, and how do we help them leapfrog? We now have knowledge, we have partners, we have networks, we have information. How can we do this better? And another issue which a few of us were discussing earlier before we came into this room was, how do we change behavior? What are the cultural innovations? How do we nudge us towards sustainable behavior through subtle policy shifts? Many of you in the room today, you've lived in different parts of the world, and you know there are different ways of being. So how can we use media, public relations? How do we leverage media to shift public opinion? How do we change from using single-use plastic? How do we make it uncool to use plastic bags and to have straws? How do we make it cooler to do things? So the whole idea of nudging. In the spirit of innovation, my colleagues have worked with 10 entrepreneurs in the audience, the Asia Pacific Low Carbon Lifestyle Startup Challenge, and I think the young colleagues who really worked on this challenge exemplify the spirit of this event. They're using nudging, blockchain, Internet of Things, machine learning, green chemistry, circular economy, biomimicry, e-mobility in their startup. Tonight we can hear them pitching at 5 p.m. and I hope you will all be there. And we'll announce which of them will receive a top-up of $10,000 to use towards their venture. So it's really a hopeful message. I'm hopeful that this region has the capacity, the responsibility, the willingness to help keep the world within planetary boundaries. And the world is looking to Asia Pacific. They're looking at all of us. They're looking at young people, business leaders, policymakers, citizens of this region, and we know that if sustainability is to succeed, it depends on the efforts of each one of us. We in UN Environment, we're here to help you shine a light on those doing good. We're here to take the best practices. We're here to share with you what works, what's worked, and we're also there with you to work on addressing your challenges. I hope this event will really help you create connections, to work towards solutions, and to provide, and we look forward to providing the best possible enabling environment for this to happen. So I wish you very fruitful discussions, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tsering, for your insightful speech. Thank you very much indeed. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we will have another welcome remarks on regional policy solutions for low carbon and low waste consumption. Top 5 lessons learned in Europe. May I take this opportunity to invite His Excellency Perka Tapiola, Ambassador of the EU delegation to Thailand, who will be sharing these welcome remarks with us today. Could you please put your hands together to welcome His Excellency Perka Tapiola on the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Dear Madam Tsering, Kunjan, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you at this quite remarkable location. If I look at the Asian ASEAN facility. Now, for a generalist diplomat, which an ambassador of course is, it's always a bit daunting when you're asked to give an expert view or give lessons learned on a subject you think you're not very well versed in. And this, of course, made me think today, earlier, am I the right person to speak on this? And then I realized, I am. And I think this gets us in to the lessons learned. Now, we as Europeans can share experience, can share our experience. Let me underline that I'm certainly not here to lecture and say that we are doing things somehow better than others. I mean, that would be quite presumptuous of me. But maybe there is something little we have learned. And I'll start by going back 20, 30 years more, to the time I was a student. And thinking a little bit on how did I look at the world, and how did we as Europeans look at the world? How did we look at environmental thinking? I think I said to somebody earlier today that there was even, I think, a bit of not taking environmentalists very seriously. We looked at the world in terms of economic development, things were going forward, consumption was going forward, so on and so forth. And now, if I look back, and I talk to the same people who were students with me, and I look at the younger generations in Europe, you see both within us, but also within society, a huge mentality shift. A shift of realizing that there are issues we really, really need to look at seriously. Now, we have seen on the international scene, on the international scene, we have seen many very important changes. We saw the Paris Climate Agreement. Most importantly, we're seeing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And these, of course, are very close to where we are here in Thailand, because a lot of that thinking builds also onto the thinking of His late Majesty, King Bhumibol Adulyadej. We are looking at our planet, we're looking at our responsibilities, and we're looking at what to do about it. Of course, we all understand that at its simplest, sustainable development is development that recognizes the links between economy, society, and the environment, and tries to create balance. And I think that if you look at summers in Europe and the seasons in Thailand, you notice that it's a high time we really pull together on global action. Green and circular economy approaches can contribute to the 2030 Agenda towards Sustainable Development Goals and targets, but fundamentally this agenda is there for us to survive as a planet, for us to live in a sustainable manner, and for our children and grandchildren to have that future. And what is the main lesson learned then? I think it is that paradigm shift, it is that mentality shift, which is maybe a bit further in Europe than in many other places, but is really needed in both developed and developing countries, with a move towards a circular economy model where nothing is wasted. And here I again go back to the society and the world I grew up in as a kid. That economy which was built, and I think still largely is built in many places, upon a quite linear take, make, and dispose model, that threatens to exhaust our planet's rather finite resources and induce irreversible climate change, which I think is already there. Now we need to try to take the clock backwards and at least manage what we have caused. The global transition towards a circular economy, where the value of products, materials, and resources is maintained in the economy for as long as possible, is really essential. It's essential to minimize waste. In 2015, the European Union launched its very ambitious circular economy package. This gave a clear signal to economic operators that the Union is using all the tools available to it to transform its economy, opening the way to new business opportunities and boosting competitiveness. The broad measures for changing the full product life cycle go far beyond a narrow focus on the end-of-life stage and underline the ambition to transform the European Union's economy and really deliver results. Innovative and more efficient ways of producing and consuming should increasingly emerge as a result of the incentives we're putting in place. Now, how did we get there? And this is where I get to those lessons learned, which I was asked to talk about. We have a long history of integration, of policy integration, and I'm happy to share some lessons which we have learned in our transformation. Over the last decade, in order to accelerate the green economy transition and encourage coherent action across relevant sectors, the Union has implemented a series of actions targeting or placing the green economy and strengthening the green economy as a main objective. We have promoted the development of enabling networks and showcased potential benefits of green practices to promote the wider uptake. In this process, I would like to emphasize 5 areas. First and foremost, and I think that that's the background for any learning, for any sort of mentality change, is understanding. And I would like to talk about the understanding of the need for an inclusive green economy and also understanding what that would mean. So that's my first point. Our definition, the Union's definition of an inclusive green economy, takes due consideration of environmental and social externalities. It does not only focus on GDP growth as an ultimate goal. And I know this is a difficult issue to come and say to countries which are trying to get their GDP figures up that, well, you shouldn't only focus on GDP, but you need to focus on that sustainability of all of it. It focuses not on GDP, but we are focusing on resource efficiency and natural capital as the building blocks of a real economy. We recognize that environmental degradation undermines long-term economic growth and human development. Hence, what's the use of being very rich if you don't have a planet to live in? Circular economy is an essential part of ensuring that you have that home, that planet to live in the future as well. Different countries, of course, may have different definitions, I'm not saying that, but most share common attention to a model which decouples growth or prosperity from the consumption of natural resources and the associated environmental impact, and links environmental sustainability as a key factor of economic development and social equity. It's important that it addresses economy, ecosystems, and human well-being in a balanced way, together, and tries to make this whole work. Now, once you understand, you move to the next point, and that's to adopt a strategic approach. The green economy transition entails very strong links of key sectors of both natural and built environments. Of course, agriculture plays a key role here, fisheries, hence the IUU discussions you sometimes hear, water, forests, and let me dwell on forests a while ago. I used to work in the pulp and paper industry before becoming a diplomat. And one of the things which the Nordic part of Europe, which I came from, realized was that there used to be a tendency in the 60s and 70s 1960s and 70s, are basically barbering large amount of forest to sell that for pulp and paper. And suddenly, even in very forested countries, you started seeing that erosion starting, which started having effects. And it was very much government, business, which found that new balance of sustainable forestry management. So that as an example. Renewable energy goes without saying, manufacturing, waste, buildings, transport, tourism, and cities. What's important is that you really mainstream green economy components across relevant sectors. And when you mainstream them, suddenly your societies start thinking, oh, why? But when you see that you don't have this mainstreaming taking place, or you see that you're in a place where you don't sort waste, for instance, you start wondering, hey, where's that bin, where's that this and that, and so on. So it becomes part of your DNA. I suppose there's a development potential in all of us. I've certainly gone through that. Third, you develop enabling frameworks. Relevant policy initiatives would include the circular economy package, which transforms Europe's economy from linear to circular by implementing an ambitious circular economy action plan, which I already mentioned. We have a resource-efficient Europe roadmap. We have a low-carbon economy roadmap. And this is also supplemented by a green action plan for SMEs and an eco-innovation action plan. So you need to have those plans to keep your strategic approach going. And then the fourth lesson, you promote green business development and green investments. And this is also a very interesting point. I read a World Bank study a few years ago on the European economic model, and people were wondering what's better, higher taxes or higher taxes or lower taxes, less government, more government, and suddenly it showed that that didn't matter. What mattered was support to research and development. And that was also the foundation for good economic development. And good economic development and R&D go very much together with what I'm talking about here. Because if you adopt environmentally friendly practices by the private sector, and that's increasingly common, and more businesses become aware of the associated commercial and economic opportunities, notably the rapid growth of the global market for environmental goods and services, and the potential savings from resource-efficient production processes, and improved reputation, increased security of supply chains, and so on and so forth, you suddenly see that this is something you really should promote and invest. Private sector initiatives include the development and adoption of corporate social responsibility strategies, environmental standards, and by the way, here Thai companies are doing relatively well, labeling and certification schemes, and these are important drivers of the green economy and transformation in Europe. But you need the investment, and this is what I said about research and development, but this is what I'm saying also about the financial support you give businesses. The investment plan for Europe offers an opportunity to accelerate investment in strategic projects on resource efficiency, circular economy, and climate action. The European Fund for Strategic Investments, or EFSI, is a cornerstone of the investment plan for Europe. And it can make a difference in areas such as the transition to clean energy suppliers, investment in urban water facilities, or reducing emissions of carbon dioxide and other air pollutants. The European Investment Fund has started to be adopted for international development as well. Africa or the EU's neighborhood areas are regions where we are putting funds, European taxpayers' money, to do this, to support environmentally sustainable business. And we have an ambition to, as of 2020, to be working on a much more global set. And finally, adopting a circular economy model. And that's relatively simple. When I talked about those recycling bins and so on. I mean, that's part of it. Because the circular economy is an essential green economy component. It promotes closed material loops, resource efficiency chains, with a system-wide approach and an approach across entire value chains. It involves designing products for reuse, using products as long as possible, remanufacturing products at the end of their service life, and in essence, avoiding waste in production and supply. The circular economy package, which we have in Europe, consists of an European Union action plan for the circular economy that establishes a concrete and ambitious program of action with measures covering the whole cycle, from production to, and consumption to waste management and the market for secondary raw materials, and a revised legislative proposal on waste. In January of this year, we, as the European Union, unveiled a new package of deliverables, going one step further in the implementation of the EU Circular Economy Action Plan. This includes a strategy for plastics, the monitoring framework of indicators, the interface between chemicals, products, and waste legislations, and the report on critical raw materials. Plastics, this strategy for plastics goes again very much to what I said in terms of a mentality shift. And I had earlier today, I was rushing from one meeting to another, and I popped by a cafe just simply to grab a glass of water, and I took my little bottle of water and asked for a glass. I was given a plastic glass. I said, well, you have a paper cup there. Could you give it to me? And the young person behind the counter looked at me and gave a big thumbs up and smiled. I realized that, okay, that thinking is there. He was, in fact, happy that I rejected the plastic cup. So, I mean, I think the coolness factor does go there. And the opportunities and challenges linked to plastics are global. And this problem can only be tackled through joint international action. As the European Union does its own homework, and we have a lot still to do, we want to also work with our partners from around the world to come up with global solutions. I think we all see the problem, and even if we don't recognize the problem, we do see it. In conclusion, I've shared with you some of the lessons which we as Europeans have learned in our implementation of an inclusive green economy. I hope our experience would inspire you a little bit in your endeavor to find your own solutions. And if you make mistakes, don't make ours, invent your own. So, I mean, that's why you share lessons learned. But let me also note that we are hitting the road with our ideas, with our experience, and we regularly organize European Union circular economy missions, which are a series of high-level political and business meetings to communicate and promote sustainable and resource-efficient policies. Past editions of the circular economy missions have taken place in Colombia, South Africa, China, and Chile, and most recently in early September of this year in India. The next circular economy mission will take place in October, late October, in Japan, together with the World Circular Economy Forum, which is organized by the Finnish Sitra Foundation and the Japanese Ministry for the Environment. There's a lot going on these issues. We have a lot of work to do together, and I do hope that we can continue this discussion on lessons learned, on things we can do together, what we can learn from each other, and let's really take that effort to change those mentalities, make people think what they, on a very human level, on a very individual level, can do for the environment. And of course, it has to start with us ourselves being models in that and thinking. With these words, I wish you much luck with today's deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Tapiola. Thanks for joining us. It's truly honored to have your presence joining us today.